Hey Pat, ready to talk some video games today?
Of course I am.
Welcome to the third episode of Passion of the Geeks, the show in which two friends and fellow geeks talk about geek and pop culture and everything else they enjoy. I am Greg.
And I am Pat.
And let's get on with it. Hello Pat, how are you doing today?
Oh, I'm doing great, thank you. How are you?
I'm fine and very excited to do this episode.
Oh, so am I.
Because after our first episode where we talked about TV pilots, the second episode where we talked about the movie Tron, our third episode, we basically have decided to dedicate it to video games, and I'm really, really excited about this.
Yeah, so am I. It's a great thing because I'm a gamer, first and foremost, and let's see what this brings today.
Okay, but let's start with having a look at some news. So, did you find out anything interesting recently?
Oh yeah, and I will start with some gaming news.
Very appropriate.
Yeah, very appropriate. Because there's something just in. There has apparently been a leak in the Microsoft Store, and for a short while it displayed a new EA game that wasn't supposed to show up yet. And that game is Star Wars Squadrons. Now, what is Star Wars Squadrons? By the time of this recording, we're not yet sure. But EA was now forced to announce an official reveal trailer. And by the time you listen to this episode, it should be released. Now, this could certainly be just a new version of Star Wars Rogue Squadron, which was a nice but ultimately not very deep action game. But it could also be a new version of the excellent, brutally difficult Star Wars space flight simulator games from the 90s. I'm talking about Star Wars X-Wing TIE Fighter, X-Wing versus TIE Fighter, and X-Wing Alliance. And that would be really awesome, especially if they would include VR support.
Yeah, that sounds very, very interesting. I mean, we did not get too many good Star Wars games in the last couple of years.
No.
And one where you could actually do some X-Wing or you could do some X-Wing flying. That would actually be something I'm interested in. So, yeah, fingers crossed that it's not just another multiplayer game with lots of loot boxes.
Yeah, maybe it's just a mobile game with loot boxes. Who knows?
Who knows, yeah.
And what about you? What did you find out?
I think we'll stay on topic, video games. Most of our listeners will probably be on top of this, but Sony released had kind of a little launch event this week for their PS5. They announced some launch titles, some games that are supposed to come out for the PS5, and they announced they showed us the design of the PS5. Have you seen the announcement trailer?
I've seen pictures. I haven't seen the trailer itself. I've looked at how the PS5 will look, and I think it doesn't look too bad.
I think the internet is a little bit divided. Some people seem to be okay with it. Others seem to hate it or not appreciate it. I think it looks like one of these appliances from the future.
Exactly.
I think it looks cool.
It looks. It would fit in any sci-fi movie, I guess.
Definitely. I mean, it's not just a black box, but we have lots of black boxes at home. So I kind of appreciate the fact that it's a black box with some white sails on the side. So that part was pretty cool. But obviously, I'm not buying a PS5 to look at it. I'm buying a PS5 to play some games. And some of the games they announced actually piqued my interest even more. So they announced Horizon Forbidden West, a sequel to Horizon Zero Dawn. So I'm definitely going to buy that one, and the announcement trailer looked really cool.
Yeah.
They announced Spider-Man Miles Morales.
Which is interesting.
Yeah, I'm going to be there for that one, day one as well.
Yeah.
I love the last Spider-Man game for PS4, and playing as Miles Morales with his special set of skills and abilities. That's just, that's going to be a lot of fun. And the third game, that was Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart. And in that game, I wasn't that interested in the game itself. It's just what they showed in that trailer, if that is actual game footage. And that's what they could do with having a PS5 prototype around for maybe a year or so. Oh my God, we're in for some treats. Because what the trailer shows is, and if it was gameplay, it's impressive. If it was video, obviously not so much. But if it was gameplay, the video showed them jumping from different dimensions to different dimensions with a completely new set of graphics and assets, and the gameplay just ran smoothly across it. And if those are the capabilities of the PS5, it's going to be awesome. It's going to be so awesome. So yeah, I'm very, very excited for that.
Yeah, I think there is a huge leap they will be doing with the PS5. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. Okay, we have a long show planned today, so let's get on with some what we've been playing, reading, or whatever. So, Pat, do you have anything interesting to check out for our listeners this week?
Oh yes, it's something very small, but we both play D&D, and we had a couple of days ago we had such a great session together. I mean, we have a great group with interesting characters and a pretty cool plot. But not everything runs smoothly all the time. I mean, it's a game after all, and sometimes dice rolls put a spoke in a wheel. Not everything goes how we plan.
And let's just say that we have one of the worst magicians ever.
Yeah, we do. No, but I mean, this is one of the greatest things about playing D&D, or I mean, pen and paper role-playing games in general. And sometimes, like last week, I am reminded of this movie called The Gamers from 2002. And it's a movie about a group of pen and paper role players that sit together on a Friday night, and they continue their ongoing campaign. And the movie switches from scenes with the player and scenes with their characters, and shows us how the campaign progresses. I mean, it's the usual thing about a kidnapped princess and a big bad called the Shadow. But all of this is, of course, exaggerated for comedic value. The players do things just because they can, or role play when one of the players dies for just a second or two, and then they take his belongings. It's a really, really funny movie that plays with how different gameplay can be to what a well thought out story is, just because they butcher their dice rolls, or sometimes when the DM does not want the players to do something, they roll incredibly well and they get to do it anyway. So it's a really funny movie, and it's apparently shot on a minimal budget by an independent studio called the Dead Gentleman Productions, or maybe they are film students. I'm not entirely clear on that. So the visual quality is rather mediocre, but as I said, it's a really fun film, and it's even funnier if you're a role player yourself, because you see yourself in the movie.
Yeah, I've followed the link you put in the show notes, and I watched a couple of minutes. I think it's definitely an amateur production.
Yeah, I think so.
Kind of, especially the sound quality is indicative of that. But yeah, if I have time, I might give it a shot and check it out, because I love all things related to pen and paper role-playing games. So
Yeah.
count me in on that.
It's only an hour. What about you then?
Well, I'm still on my Batman replay. I've reached Arkham Knight at this point. And even though it's probably the biggest game of the series and kind of the gameplay is most refined, I still think the first one in the series was the best. Mm-hmm. And kind of for me, my biggest gripe with Arkham Knight is there's a little bit too much of the Batmobile gameplay.
Yeah.
It's so cool to be Batman and kind of glide through the city of Gotham, which is very well realized and kind of looks great and everything. So why do I have to spend so much time driving around in a tank? But yeah, that's maybe just me. Maybe others really enjoyed it, and it's a good game. It's a really good game. Yeah. It's a lot of fun and cool gameplay. But yeah, still the first Arkham Asylum, still my favorite Batman Arkham game. Still my favorite.
Yeah, I would agree. The Arkham Knight is a great game. There's a little bit too much padding going on, lengthening all these Batmobile passages. I think it gets a little bit too much. I agree.
Yeah, it's too much. Yeah.
Did you play Arkham Origins?
I haven't played the Origins yet. No, I've played kind of the 3 titles in the main series. I haven't played Origins.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so kind of speaking of me replaying some old PlayStation games, as our feature topic today, as our discussion, as our story of the week, we decided to look back at the 8th generation of video game consoles. 8th generation being the current Sony PlayStation 4, the current Xbox One, the Nintendo Switch, and so on. Kind of all these kind of current consoles that, well, most of them, especially the PS4 and the Xbox, reaching the end of their life cycle at this point, kind of with both of them having announced their replacements at the end of the year. So we thought it's kind of as good as time as any to look back at this generation and pick our 5 favorite games.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Which turned out to be a really, really difficult task, just to pick 5 games that, I decided to pick those 5 games that kind of, for me, defined this generation. Kind of those games I loved playing the most, those games that, or whose story I found really, really compelling, and just generally games that had really good gameplays. So what about you? What was your decision-making process?
Well, first and foremost, it was a hard decision-making process. Personally, at least half of the time I play retro games. So I'm more of a retro gamer than I am a current generation gamer. And there are a lot of games that I still want to try in this current generations that I wasn't able to try just yet. So what I did is I decided to pick games. I always go back to games I've started and played, and I always like to play again. Oftentimes it's about the story, but I also wanted to pick games that I feel they belong in this generation. So there are a couple of 2D games that are released in this generation, but they don't feel like an 8th generation game. It's something they could have done earlier, but they did it just yet. And I left these out. There are a couple of really great games, but I thought I want to concentrate on what this generation made great.
We should mention that it's a nowhere definitive list, no. Or the definitive list. At least me, I haven't played, just as you said, I haven't played everything. These are just those 5 games among all those games I've played. And I don't own an Xbox, so all these Xbox exclusive games, I wasn't able to play them. So therefore, they had no chance to get on the list. Before we dive into our list and kind of our 5 choices in no particular order, because I don't want to do that. No particular order. I just kind of, for me, video games I like, they either need to have a compelling story or really, really good gameplay, preferably both.
Yeah.
So kind of some of the games on my list are mainly there for the story. Some of them are there mainly for the gameplay. But overall, kind of all these games kind of convinced me in both those areas to spend a lot of time with them. And there were other kind of really cool games that I played that were either really good on the story, that really compelling stories, but they weren't so good on the gameplay part, which is okay because they did not set out to do that. Mm-hmm. And there were some games that are really good at gameplay, but if the story doesn't really capture me, I tend to lose interest a little bit. So that's where I'm coming from.
Yeah. Okay,
Pat, can you start us off with your first choice of your 5 games of this generation?
Certainly. And my first choice is, really my first choice. This probably doesn't come as a surprise to anyone who has ever played The Witcher 3, that this is one of my favorite games from the 8th generation. In fact, I would even go as far to say that Witcher 3 is not only one of my favorite games, but it most certainly is one of the best games of this generation, period. At least top 5. I have played and was an avid fan of both Witcher 1 and 2. And I think especially part 2 is still a really great game. It's more linear than its sequel. But Witcher 3 is an open world fantasy game set in the universe created by Polish writer Andrzej Sapkowski, I think his name is pronounced, which is based on a mix of classic fantasy with elves and dwarves, but also East European folklore. So it's a really cool mix. And contrary to a lot of other RPGs, you don't create your character. You play the role of Geralt of Rivia, who is a witcher. And he is basically a monster hunter who is mutated through the use of potion. And this third game opens basically in medias res. Geralt's adopted daughter Ciri is missing and pursued by a group of spectral riders called the Wild Hunt. And Geralt's goal is to find Ciri before the Wild Hunt does.
I'm really glad you put The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt on your list, because that allowed me to pick another game in that spot. I agree with everything you said. The Witcher 3 is just an amazing game.
Yeah.
Definitely one of the best games of this generation. And it's not only is kind of, I think the gameplay is pretty good. Mm-hmm. It may be kind of if you replay it right now, maybe has aged a little bit, but still very good. And the story is just really, really compelling.
Oh yeah.
And it's one of those rare role-playing games. The issue we just described with Batman, that there were so many side quests that kind of got in the way of the main story and kind of took away a little bit of the main story's immediacy. Mm. In Witcher, I never felt like this, because the side missions, the side quests, they're crafted in such an interesting way that they really enhance the world. They really enhanced your character. So I don't know how many hours I spent with The Witcher 3, and none of them was wasted on something I did not enjoy in the end. So yeah, definitely a great choice for the 5 definitive games of this generation.
Oh yeah. I mean, the 8th generation is a little bit a generation that goes a lot into open world. This I would say this is where open world games really hit off. And in a lot of open world games, you're just basically ticking off icons on a big map. And as you said, each and every side quest has its own well-written little and sometimes even large plot. And that often requires the player to make moral choices. And they're not always easy. So this is something that the game does very, very well. And it still looks gorgeous.
Still looks gorgeous, yeah.
Yeah, it has beautiful landscapes and really nice vistas. And with the dynamic weather system they built and the day and night cycles, they always look different when you visit them. It's a really beautiful game.
I agree. I wholeheartedly agree. Witcher 3 definitely belongs on top of any list about this generations of video games. Speaking of Witcher 3, it was almost on my list as well. And in the end, I decided to throw it off the list because, first of all, because you put it on. So it allowed me to choose Horizon Zero Dawn.
Excellent choice.
Which I think is very, very similar to The Witcher 3, kind of for all the reasons you just described. It's just a beautifully designed game with a beautiful story and really, really good gameplay. The only difference being, instead of the gruffy Geralt, we have young and what's a good adjective to describe Aloy? Kind of young and resourceful Aloy.
Oh yeah, she's resourceful.
And it's just the world they created with kind of this post-apocalyptic world with these machine animals and everything. Don't want to go too much into recounting the plot of Horizon Zero Dawn, because I actually think people should experience that story for themselves. It's just a beautifully carved story, great gameplay, and just if you haven't played the sequel Forbidden West is coming out, so what are you waiting for? Get yourself ready for that game. I'm pretty sure that one will be even better.
Greg is right. I agree wholeheartedly. Because, as I said, Horizon Zero Dawn was one of my Generation 8 favorites as well. And, there are people who say it doesn't add something new to the open world genre. It's just redoing stuff that other games did as well. And I can agree with that. But just the fact that the world it takes place in and the characters are so interesting that I want to learn more about them. I want to know what happened. It's something that not every game manages to do. It's a world that really feels lived in.
Of course, they had some things. There are some things they borrowed from other games. They even have Ubisoft towers.
Yes.
But those towers, they're actually cool elements in the game. It's not just, you have to get up there. It's actually an integral part of the gameplay. And those missions where you actually have to do, or those parts of the game where you actually have to do that, they're really, really fun and engaging. So, I really like that game.
Yeah.
What's your second choice? Game number 2 on our unnumbered list.
Well, just because you mentioned Ubisoft towers, I think my next game should be from Ubisoft. Because it's Assassin's Creed, the inventor of the Ubisoft towers. More specifically, Assassin's Creed Syndicate. And now I know this sounds a little strange, being Assassin's Creed Syndicate one of my favorite games from this generation, especially because the Assassin's Creed games and we had a rough start. I didn't think part 1 was bad, but I wasn't blown away by it. To me, it felt a little bit like an open world Prince of Persia with a boring level design, boring characters, and boring plot. And at that point, they still had these sequences that played in the present with Desmond Miles, where you're climbing in a device called the Animus, where you relive all these memories. And I wasn't very happy with that. Then I felt that the second game was much better. I like Ezio as a character. But the Assassin's Creed series became really great with Black Flag, which is not an 8th generation game, so it does not fit in that list. But it really began to captivate me. And also there was Rogue and Unity, both okay games. But then came Syndicate. And Syndicate takes place in Victorian London, which is a scenario I really like. I'm kind of a Sherlock Holmes fan, and the Victorian London is always something I really like to explore. And Assassin's Creed Syndicate gives you the possibility to explore this. And there is a great plot involved in that. And the fact that you now play two characters, the twins Jacob and Evie Fry, which one of them is more a fighter and the other is more of a stealth-based character. And I just love what they did with the scenario. It's one of the Assassin's Creed games I really liked going back to and just dabble a little bit in it. It's certainly not one of the best games of the 8th generation, but it's still one of my favorites.
I like the whole Assassin's Creed series. I kind of enjoy those games as well.
Oh, yeah.
I totally agree with you. For my money, the best game in the series is Black Flag.
Probably, yes.
I had a lot of... I mean, that's the most fun I ever had pirating anywhere. So it's a really good game. I like the setting of Syndicate. The gameplay in the end, kind of all the missions felt very repetitive after some point.
Yeah.
But it was beautifully executed. But I have to admit, I'm actually quite enjoyed the last Assassin's Creed game, Odyssey, as well.
Oh yeah, that one was great too.
Even though they kind of went away a little bit from the whole stealth and assassin aspect of the game, and they will kind of evolved more into a fighter RPG. Mm-hmm. But I think they just realized they had to evolve a little bit, because I think the whole stealth mission thing, I think at some point you're going to be over that.
Probably, yes.
I would actually say that we have an Assassin's Creed title on this list is perfectly okay, is perfectly fitting.
Yeah, it is a great series. Yeah. Are you looking forward to Valhalla?
Vikings?
Yeah.
Obviously. Yeah, I'm just hoping that kind of the one mistake they made with Odyssey, at least in my opinion, is that the game was too long. There was too much padding, and you had to spend too much time grinding to get to a certain level to be able to continue with the main quest. And I just hope they don't do that in Valhalla. But yeah, I'm definitely gonna be playing that one as well. Yeah, it's supposed to come out this year, isn't it?
I suppose it does. Yes, I don't know if it is postponed or not, but it should be in 2020. Yes.
Yeah. Anything else you want to add about Syndicate?
Well, just maybe in general. As I said, part of the appeal to me is the scenario, the London. And this is something that the Assassin's Creed series basically always did very well, whether it's Venice, Rome, and all these Italian cities, they're very well implemented, or the Paris of Unity. It's just a lot of fun to explore more or less historically accurate, in gameplay terms, more or less historically accurate city. So this is a lot of fun. And this was also true for Origins, which takes place in ancient Egypt, which is always a scenario I like. And of course, the Greek with Odyssey. But nothing comes close to London. Free running through London. Who doesn't want to do this?
Well, I think free running through London seems pretty fun, but I have a game who can actually top that on my list.
Okay.
I mean, free running across London is pretty cool, but free running across Hyrule, it's a bit cooler, I think. So my next game on the list is Zelda Breath of the Wild, or The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. And I just like what Nintendo did to open world gaming with this one. And kind of I like that Zelda Breath of the Wild gave me a sense of adventure and exploration that some other open world games are missing a little bit, because you always have the dotted line, you always have the arrow where you need to go to. And Zelda Breath of the Wild basically gives you nothing like that. In the beginning, they just tell you, okay, you've lost your memories. Over there is a castle with Ganon. Let's do these tutorial missions. And after that, you're on your own. You don't have to do anything in that game except exploring and kind of figuring out what you're able to do. You can climb everything. You can technically go everywhere if you're equipped enough. And I think what I really like about this is I'm seeing this place over there that looks interesting. So I need to play the game in order to get the necessary equipment to get there. If I have to climb something that is too high, I either need to find a way around, I explore, or I need to kind of play the game, do some missions or whatever to get the right equipment or more stamina to do that. So yeah, I just really like this open approach to open world gaming that I think Zelda Breath of the Wild just executed beautifully. So yeah, I'm really excited about their follow-up game, which is probably gonna come up next year or maybe the year after that. So yeah, Zelda Breath of the Wild, definitely an open world title of this generation that learned some lessons from others.
Well, definitely. You're completely right. I mean, Breath of the Wild redefines what an open world is. No invisible walls, nothing that stops you from going anywhere. I mean, you could, I guess, theoretically, go against Ganon after the tutorial missions.
There are people who do that.
Yeah, I guess so.
There are people who do that, yeah.
Well, but there are certainly other people who think that this is not a Zelda game. And I mean, I see where they're coming from. It really does not play like all the other Zelda games before. It's really its own thing. But I mean, holding this against the game is not fair. I think it's okay trying to do something new, something different. And I think it incorporates Zelda mythos quite excellent into the world they have built. So I'm afraid I haven't finished it yet. I didn't have enough time to do that. I do agree that there's maybe a lot of padding going on. There's certain parts of the game drag a little bit, but not in a bad way. You're very motivated to do that.
I mean, here's the thing. It's not really padding because you don't have to do them.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, there are people who finish Zelda Breath of the Wild in 36 minutes or something.
Mm-hmm.
They just do the tutorial and walk straight up to Ganon.
Yeah.
And they're able to kill him. So obviously there's very, very skilled players. But yeah, it's just, I love this sense of exploring and adventure. So yeah, Zelda Breath of the Wild, definitely a game on my list.
Yeah, good one.
What's your next game? We're at number 3 of our unnumbered lists.
Yeah, I'm a little bit boring because my next game is, again, an open world RPG. But I love them. So that they're just some of my favorite. And that would be Dragon Age Inquisition. And I know this might be a little controversial, as I think Dragon Age Inquisition did get a lot of rather negative feedback by players, not so much professional publications. They rated it very high, I think. A lot of people were unhappy with the game, and a lot of people think that the only good Dragon Age is the first one, Dragon Age Origins. Personally, I don't agree. I think the Dragon Age series became better with each incarnation. I know that in Dragon Age 2 there was no real free roaming because you were mostly in a single city, the city of Kirkwall. But I thought that was brilliant. It showed you how everything around you changed based on the things you did and the decisions you made. It wasn't like a road trip like the first one, where you tick off one settlement after another until you invade the castle with the big bad. And I like that a lot. Now, Dragon Age Inquisition made something in between. And there are several locations you can travel to, but you always return to these locations. And they also change because of the things you do. I feel like I am changing something in the world. But one thing that a lot of people get wrong is each location in Dragon Age is really big. It's huge. It's a huge open area, but it's not a dynamic open world. There are no NPCs roaming around and doing their business. There's no day and night cycle. There is no dynamic weather. Each location has its weather. It's beautifully made, but it's not dynamic. Again, locations change because of the things you do in the story. And this is not Skyrim, and I think a lot of people got that wrong.
I quite enjoyed Dragon Age Inquisition as well. It was probably, for me at least, one of those games on PS4 that comes closest to actual pen and paper role-playing game.
Oh, yeah.
So I quite enjoyed that aspect of it. But I think for me, and I think I haven't completed it actually. I think for me, the biggest issue was it reminded me how much I love pen and paper role-playing games. So I'd rather play those than finish Dragon Age Inquisition, which is, I would actually say, is very high praise for a game to remind you of something you actually really love. So yeah, for me, it's the game that made me play more D&D.
Well, that is something great, at least. No, but you're completely right. It allows you to play your own role, not a lot of other games allow you to. So I completely agree with you. I mean, I can understand that you have not finished it. It is very well written, but I would say there is a little bit of padding going on. There are a couple of side quests that are really tedious. I mean, they're optional, but I'm sometimes a bit of a completionist, and they still drag me down. I mean, I played a lot of role-playing games, and this one does not only play very, very well, it also looks very well. It's a breathtaking game, whether you're in rain-swept mountains or an eerie swamp or exploring the desert ruins. It always looks awesome. And the great character models fit perfectly, and they have great voice acting. So a very well-made product.
You mentioned that the Dragon Age Inquisition looks beautiful. For me, one of the most beautiful games on PS4 is God of War from 2018. And for me, God of War is one of those games. It basically was a blind buy for me. I've never played a God of War game before, but it got good reviews and it looked looked good on the box, and I started to play it, and I was immediately immersed. First of all, it looks beautiful. Secondly, the gameplay is awesome. It's just good gameplay. And thirdly, the story was actually amazing. I mean, a story like that in a game that in a series of games that it's basically just known for being beat 'em ups and kind of just fighting and being brutal and everything, was actually a little bit of a revelation to me. And I couldn't give you one aspect of the game that I think needs changing. It's just from beginning to the end, it's just so beautifully crafted. And for example, one thing I did not notice, I did not know about the Blades of Chaos.
Oh, okay.
Because I've never played God of War. So I started off with this axe, the Leviathan axe, which is a pretty cool weapon. And the way the weapon is designed in the game is, it's just so good. You're holding a controller, but you're actually feeling the axe when you throw it or when you kind of chop something with her. It's very, very well made. And then as part of the story, you figure out, okay, this Leviathan axe, this is not going to cut it anymore. I need other weapons. Oh, I buried these long ago. And then you get these Blades of Chaos, and you just got this whole other game mechanic, this whole other fighting style in the middle of the game. And it's just awesome. And this was kind of not only you get a cool new weapon, it made sense in the story, and it enhanced the gameplay. So yeah, for me, God of War, definitely one of the best titles of this generation as well.
Yeah.
Did you play the last God of War as well?
Yeah, but it took a while until I've played it, because I played the other God of War titles, and well, I didn't think they were bad. It's just I had enough of Kratos and his vengeance against the gods. I felt that the first part was cool, the second was okay, but then I had it with Kratos. And it took a while until I decided to give the new God of War a chance. And when I did, I was pretty much as blown away as you were. Because this is not the old God of War. This is something entirely new and is so much better than the other God of War titles. There's still sometimes, with the fighting and stuff, it still feels sometimes like the old God of War in a good way, because, I mean, the way Kratos finishes his enemies is always awesome. But what they added to the game, it just made a potentially good game memorable and really, really great. So I agree wholeheartedly. This is a game that needs on the best of Generation 8 list.
God of War, it's just a great game. I'm pretty sure they're gonna do a follow-up for PS5 as well. The one thing that annoyed me in the game is you have this room where you can travel to the other realms. Mm-hmm. And there is a realm, Asgard, but you can't travel there. So I'm hoping that they're gonna allow me to travel to Asgard in the next game. But yeah, that was my number 3. What's your number 4?
My number 4 would be Nier Automata. Have you ever heard of that game?
I've heard of that game, but I've never played it.
Yeah, it's a very special game to me. It's a little bit difficult talking about Nier Automata without going into spoiler territory, and I definitely don't want to spoil anything, because the plot is surprisingly deep, and it's one of the most interesting aspects of the game. Well, this is not to say that the game doesn't work on a mechanical level. It's a very good action role-playing game where you start playing the part of 2B, a female battle android fighting machine leftovers from a great war on a planet we have to assume it's Earth. There are apparently no more humans, and learning what happened is part of the plot. And even though I have nothing but praise for the plot itself, there is one very annoying thing about discovering the whole plot, and that is you have to play the game multiple times. Now, and this isn't something I usually like. I personally want to be able to enjoy the complete story when I'm playing a game. I don't want to play over and over again. But here it's not that bad. I think, if I remember correctly, you need about 3 playthroughs to experience everything. So it's okay, and the playthroughs really differ from each other.
How long does a playthrough last?
Well, that's a good question. I would have to look at my save files. I think you can do a lot of side quests as well, but you don't have to, especially it's the second time you play through it. But I think the first time I needed about 20 hours or something. It doesn't take 60 hours to complete everything.
I mean, yeah, that would have been my question. I mean, if it takes you 20 hours, it's okay to require 3 playthroughs. If it takes you 60 or more, then it's the kind of time commitment not everyone can put into a game anymore.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
So make sure you design your experiences that a lot of people can actually experience them.
Yeah. I mean, the good thing is that the game is really fun to play. The game mechanics work really well. It switches a little bit between a sort of shoot 'em up style with flying a spaceship and a 3D adventure where you attack things with your swords. Well, and it looks amazing. It really manages to create an atmosphere not many games are able to, especially if you consider that 2B, the main character, looks a bit like she was designed by a post-puberty teenager. But it fits. The design fits into everything after all.
Okay. That was Nier Automata. I can't say too much about it because, yeah, as I mentioned before, I've never played it. But if you like it, it's definitely something I need to look into. Definitely something I need to look into.
Yeah.
So this brings me to my number 4. And yeah, I'm going to go with Uncharted 4.
Oh, yes.
I love all the Naughty Dog games. Last of Us and the other Uncharteds. Even... what was their first game? The one you can actually play in Uncharted 4.
A Crash Bandicoot.
Crash Bandicoot, yeah. So they're just all of them good games. Mm-hmm. But Uncharted 4, it's just the gameplay and the storytelling. It's just... Some people argue, yeah, it's more like a movie than an actual game. But it's a pretty good movie that you can participate in. And kind of most of the levels are actually very, very well designed. And the way they hide load screens and everything, it's just very, very well put together. And I mean, those climbing mechanics, I mean, if you compare the climbing mechanics of Uncharted 4 to, let's say, Uncharted 1, you can actually see how much the gameplay or these mechanics evolve. Because most of the time, and that's about 98%, Nathan Drake does exactly what you want him to do.
Yeah.
And that wasn't always the case. And kind of the whole story about these pirates, this legendary pirate utopia, it's just really well put together. The riddles that you have to solve sometimes are just really interesting. Even the gun gameplay is exciting, and that usual part in an Uncharted game where you have to run towards the camera. Even that one is fun in this one because, contrary to some other games, it just works because of the controls. So yeah, Uncharted 4, definitely one of my favorite action platformers. And I think one could consider it a platformer.
A little bit, yes.
Yeah, of this generation. Yeah. Uncharted 4, I just replayed it recently, and it's just, even the second time or the third time, it's just a really, really good game. And beautifully looking.
Oh, yes. I think it's no exaggeration when I say the Uncharted games, especially Uncharted 1, was one of my most important reasons why I bought a PS3 and later a PS4. I mean, Sony always had great exclusives for their PlayStations. Uncharted captured me from the very first moment you meet Nathan Drake. He's so likable. So I want to be Nathan Drake. He's witty, he's hilarious, he's brave, he's dashing. Yeah, you could say he's a little bit like a modern day Indiana Jones without the Doctor title. And I think his adventures in general, they feel like a modernized version of Indiana Jones, with the traveling all over the world and exploring ancient ruins and finding treasure, and this makes him even more like Indy, basically ending his adventures empty-handed.
All of them.
Yeah, all of them.
Kind of maybe a couple of gold coins, but that's it.
Yeah,
but I think that's part of the charm. I think all the indie stories and all these kind of explorer stories. I mean, if you have them get back home with their huge discovery or something to prove their huge discovery, I mean, where's the point in that? You want your heroes to suffer, even in victory.
Yeah. And I mean, the cast is great. I not just Nathan. I mean, Sully is incredible as a mentor and surrogate father figure. And I mean, both Elena and Chloe, who cannot love them? Seriously.
Yeah, obviously. I mean, and I think what I like about kind of the way Elena and Chloe are portrayed, they're not just damsels in distress.
Yeah.
Of course, you have to save them sometimes, but they're actually female characters who stand up for themselves and have a character arc on their own.
Yeah.
So I quite like that as well. Yeah. So yeah, good game, good gameplay, good story.
Really. Yeah.
So Uncharted 4 needs to be on my list.
Definitely.
So this brings us to the last entry on our list. What's your number 5?
Yeah, my number 5 is actually a very new game. It's Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. You know, I'm a bit of a Star Wars fan, and I wasn't very happy with what EA did with the new Star Wars Battlefront. I don't know if you have played that or not.
I've just played the first one, but that was enough for me.
Yeah, I mean, I am not a multiplayer gamer. I'm just not competitive enough.
Me neither, yeah.
I don't like measure myself with others, and I'm not good enough. But anyway, I was cautiously optimistic when I heard that EA, the company that had previously proclaimed that single-player games are dead, had made a single-player Star Wars game. And then I heard it was set between the prequels and the original trilogy when the Empire is at its height. And finally, I heard that it was made by the guys who made the awesome Titanfall 2. So I bought it. I bought it a little late. I bought it after I had seen the last Star Wars movie in theater. And I was a little disappointed. I won't go into detail just now, but suffice to say, I was utterly disappointed.
Let's save that for a Star Wars episode.
Indeed. Now, I was really looking for a good Star Wars experience to make up for that. And first I replayed a couple of older Star Wars games and reread a couple of expanded universe novels. And then I finally decided to give this game a chance. And it was awesome. It plays a little bit like a mix between Uncharted and Batman Arkham Asylum.
Yeah.
I would say.
Mm-hmm. That's pretty accurate, yeah.
And with Cal, who is a young Jedi Padawan, we have a character that believably grows and adds new gameplay elements during the course of the game, which I found awesome. I mean, the game plays a little bit like a Metroidvania, where you have this semi-open world, but certain parts are not accessible until you have the right equipment, the right force powers, or the right item, and it opens up more and more. And I love that. I love how it plays. I like what they did with the story. I don't want to go into spoiler territory here, but I actually felt like a really great Star Wars story.
Yeah, I mean, compared to the other EA Star Wars games, it was definitely a leap in the right direction. Mm-hmm. And I really enjoyed the game as well. And kind of the mix between the platforming and the open world elements and the RPG elements, kind of choosing your Jedi powers and kind of the whole skill tree, actually, yeah, was a lot of fun. And the story was quite compelling. Mm-hmm. I would say better than maybe the last Star Wars movie. So, yeah, I think it's definitely a valid entry into, the Star Wars mythology.
Yeah.
Jedi Fallen Order. If you buy one of those EA Star Wars games, buy that one, I would say.
Exactly. What about your last game?
Yeah, my number 5 is I started gaming with a Game Boy. I think that was my first video game console. I call it console I had. So I still like those Nintendo games. And every time I buy a new Nintendo console, you obviously need to have the Zelda game. Mm-hmm. But you also need to have the Super Mario game.
Yeah.
And for me, Super Mario Odyssey is just a great Super Mario game. And if you're a great Super Mario game, you're automatically at near the top of any game lists as well. So what I like about Super Mario Odyssey is basically they were able to turn Super Mario, a platformer, into kind of an open world game, which is kind of just speaking of one of the levels, without too much of spoilers here. My favorite level is New Donk City. Mm-hmm. And if you're kind of one thing I didn't notice in the beginning, New Donk City doesn't technically have any enemies after the initial mission to free the city. After that, it's just the buildings, the people there jumping around and getting those moon bits you need to cover, need to fuel your spaceship. And just the whole gameplay is just so inventive. The new mechanic with the hat that allows you to inhabit other life forms and everything. It's just such a cool gameplay. And if you compare Super Mario Odyssey to, let's say, Super Mario on Super Mario 64, it's just you can see how much these games have evolved over the last 10, 15, 20 years. And it's just Super Mario Odyssey. It's just a great game to just switch on, play for 15, 20 minutes, which usually turns into closer to an hour than a half an hour. And you just collect some moons and then you put it away again. And it's always fun. And I mentioned before that I usually like games that have a story or kind of tell a compelling story. And obviously Super Mario Odyssey doesn't really tell a story, but the gameplay is so amazing. It's so very well thought through that it's just a great way to spend your time playing Super Mario Odyssey.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I would agree with you that Super Mario Odyssey is the best Mario game since the first Mario Galaxy. And it's probably one of the must-have titles if you own a Switch. It's just, to me, it feels a little bit unoriginal. It's a wild mix of game mechanics from different games blended together and then made it look like a Mario game. And there's nothing bad about that. It's just previously a Mario game brought something new to the genre. Nintendo used to create blueprints for other games, and now they have taken other blueprints and meshed them together in their game. Again, this is not something bad. It's perhaps because I'm a little bit of a Nintendo fanboy because I grew up with them. I played every Super Mario game, and I have to confess here, I like the two-dimensional Marios still more than the three-dimensional Marios, with Super Mario Bros. 3 being my favorite, followed by Super Mario World. But I think I liked it. I liked it a lot. I just was hoping for more. Maybe I had my expectations set too high. And I'm not a huge fan of these New York style levels. I think they don't work for me. They don't fit into a Mario game, but that's just my opinion.
I love that level. It's my favorite level of the whole game.
Well, different tastes, of course. But
yeah, different tastes. Yeah, I think I always say there are different kinds of taste. There's good taste and there's bad taste. So
yeah, mine is definitely bad.
No, I would say so. Okay, I think that was 5 each, wasn't it?
Yeah, we're through with it.
I think that's a pretty decent list, I would say. Maybe not the definitive one, but I think pretty close. It's a little bit heavy on open world titles,
yeah,
but we both enjoy them, so I think there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, and as I said, I really think that this 8th generation of console, they're sort of the open world generation of consoles. This is where technology has finally allowed to make good open world games.
Yeah. Well, let's see what Generation 9 is all about. Maybe a new kind of game will be the kind of leading game or kind of a sort of game on that console. I think until PlayStation 5 or the Xbox Series X.
Is it still called Scorpio? Or did they drop that name?
No, it's called Xbox Series X, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, they're straight. I mean, Sony is so straightforward, their naming scheme, and Microsoft is so confusing. But yeah, but I think until then we still have a couple of actually big games coming out. There's still Last of Us Part 2. It's coming out next week or this week, whenever you're listening to it. And I think for me, probably the last hurrah of this console generation, or maybe the first big game on the new one, will be Cyberpunk 2077.
Oh yeah, I'm so looking forward to Cyberpunk 2077, especially after how great Witcher 3 turned out. It looks very, very promising.
It looks very promising, yeah. Okay, I think that's it for this week. We're a bit longer than usually, but I think that's okay. So, yeah, Pat, was nice talking to you again.
Yeah, likewise. I enjoyed our discussion.
Me too. So, thanks for listening. Please like, share, and subscribe to our podcast. We're on all major podcasting services, and you can find us on passionofthegeeks.com. So yeah, see you next week.
Hear you next week. Goodbye, everyone.
Goodbye, everyone, and be excellent to each other.